JointCommittee. I'm Cindy Akery, representative for House District 40. The events that we're talking about took place on the weekend of the 13th, 14th of December, and throughout that following week, we were anticipating leadership elections in the House of Representatives. I'd been contacted all weekend by members of the House, lobbying for various members that they were supporting. Until Monday night, I had not been contacted by a lobbyist in that regard. Upon returning home from the Capitol on Monday evening, had several messages from private citizens and a lobbyist in support of one of the representatives that was running for this seat, telling me that they had campaign donations for me and were supporting a specific representative. That evening, I had contacted my chief of staff, my campaign manager, and another state representative to see if she'd gotten calls similar. But I was very disturbed by the fact that they were referring to having checks for me and wanting me to support a candidate for this seat. I was a little taken back by the fact that we had third parties involved in that discussion and wanted to know what the proper procedure was. I did not return the calls. As I took the messages off my phone, as I normally do, I deleted the messages. I wasn't anticipating that it would turn into something of this magnitude. I got a call from the Speaker of the House and Representative Mike May on my way into the Capitol on Monday morning the 15th, asking if I had been approached by anyone in this regard. I told him I had, and he asked me to meet me at the Capitol, or meet him at the Capitol that morning. I talked to him at the Capitol and explained to him the calls that I'd gotten and the details that were disturbing to me, and wanted to know how he wanted me to respond, because I felt very uncomfortable with the situation and felt, I'd been in this business for half of my adult life, working with candidates and public officials and lobbyists, and never once had the terms donations and votes used in the same sentence, and I just really wanted to know where to go with this. As I left his office, he'd asked me to make a statement, which I typed in his office and left for him, and went upstairs to my office on the 3rd floor, where I ran into Mr. Groves. And as I was working in my office, when he came into my office, I didn't recognize him, thought he was a constituent. We talked about church, he helped me move a filing cabinet, and then when he asked to talk about the leadership elections, I was a little confused, and when I realized who I was talking with, and he told me he had some campaign donations for me. I told him I couldn't talk about my campaign at the Capitol, so he suggested we meet off-site before the leadership elections. I didn't think that we should talk about that it was inappropriate under the circumstances. He went on to indicate that the organization that he worked for had supported my campaign, and he thought that gave him the right to talk to me about the leadership elections, that they were supporting Representative Balmer, and asked, that we meet before Friday. At that point, I just asked him to leave my office, and he did. I had asked for his business card. I took it straight up to Mike May's office and left it with him, because I just didn't want there to be any indication that there was anything that wasn't appropriate going on upstairs.
Okay, if I could get you to sort of go back and flesh in a lot of details for us, if you would. For example, you said that there were messages left from several citizens as well as from a lobbyist. So if you would tell us, as best you can recall, who left the message and what they said.
I had 3 messages.
Hold on 1 second.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You're opening the area that I was hoping to focus on, because there's a lot of references to multiple messages from, and you mentioned all the messages that you got over that weekend. There's multiple references in discussions with members of the chiropractic group.
Yes.
As well as with Mr. Groves and an individual asking him how best to solicit support for David Balmer from you, and I'm trying to figure out what of those messages were specific to Eric.
I had one message from Eric Groves saying that he had some checks for me, apologizing for not raising some funds for my campaign like they had said they would do, and he wanted to meet with me and to talk about the leadership elections. They were supporting David Balmer.
Can you tell us exactly, I mean, to the very best of your recollection, because you don't have this message anymore, right?
Right.
So tell us, I mean, Eric Groves said, and then fill in that blank is very.
He just said, "This is Eric Rose. Sorry, I haven't been in touch. I know we promised to raise some funds for you before the election, and things kind of got away from us." He said, "We have the leadership elections coming up. I have some checks I need to get to you. We're supporting Representative Balmer, and I'd like to talk to you. Can you call me back?" And I took the number down, and that was the end of that conversation, or message.
Sorry, I got it right. Okay, so not good.
Thank you. Did you know before, so this is the weekend of the 13th, Mike May announces his resignation on the 12th, which is that Friday, so did you know before that weekend that either the chiropractors PAC or Eric Groves representing them had checks for you for your campaign?
Before the election, I had met with the Chiropractors Association, and they were very cordial. We agreed on a lot of values that impact some of the areas that I was interested in focusing on, and they had supported my campaign and did offer to raise some money for me.
But that was
before the election.
That was back in October, because
Yes.
there's something interesting in all this emails that were shared, and one of them is an exchange between Terrence Snyder and Eric Groves about PAC money and 527s, and as of October 28th, there's a message that says they're talking about where to put money. Henry never asked for money for the 527, so I'm not going to beg to give someone money. Then the other part of that message says the only other GOP